Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. Got some big topics today, talking some more about Ben Roethlisberger and his impending retirement, and the NCAA allowed NIL endorsements this year. But before we get into that stuff, you've been doing the 7-on-7 circuit, Matt, so why don't you give us an update on how that's going?
Yeah, so we had a 7-on-7 tonight, and it was just us and another local school, Chestnut Ridge, and it was really nice to to have it's one that we've done every year since I've been the head coach, and it's nice because sometimes when you get into the tournaments, some teams become so competitive that they take the general mission of 7-on-7 season, which is to learn your offense, learn your defense, and kind of learn the skills to lead the camp. And sometimes that gets lost in the tournaments. So it was nice tonight to be able to, if something didn't look right, you could line it back up and kind of point out what you should be looking at. And I had my younger quarterbacks that are new, not new, but newish to the offense. So it was nice to be able just to say, okay, well, we missed that, but let's come back to this and go through some stuff. So we scored some touchdowns, we gave up some stuff, but overall the weather was perfect, and we got a lot of great work in. So I was really, really proud of the kids, because so far this summer I've thrown a lot at them with some different coverage changes defensively, and today was probably the best that we've handled adjustments on the fly and communication. So I'm kind of teetering on that positive side a little bit more than usual for this time of year.
That's good. I was actually up in Pennsylvania for the holiday weekend, and I saw one of the newspapers was talking about how 7-on-7 is becoming a big deal in Pennsylvania, and I was thinking, how far behind the times are they? Like, we were doing 7-on-7s a decade ago when I was playing, and now I think the difference is back then you would do 7-on-7s and then go to the regular season and proceed to throw the ball 2% of the time. So it was almost like a wasted whatever. I mean, you learn the passing routes or whatever, and then if in the game, if you're not doing it, who cares? Like, what's the difference? But I'm hoping that the high school football in Pennsylvania starts to catch up more, because I really think if you can start passing the ball, and I know quarterback's a big key, but if you can make those reads easy, it's a good equalizer for teams that don't have the talent against some of those bigger schools, because if you're trying to run down their throat, they're just going to stop it, and there's no way around it.
Well, and the funny thing with that is that what you have a lot of times with some teams is that they will change their offense. So maybe they're like a double tight I team, or they run the ball, like you said, 98% of the time. Well, then they go into 7-on-7, and it's like they're showing these like empty sets and shotgun things, and basically running like a separate offense to try to win these 7-on-7s. And my philosophy personally has always just been run your offense. If your offense is double tight, double wing, well then run that in your 7-on-7. Run your passing game. Give as much of an authentic look as you can get, because that's only going to make your kids that much better. Like, if they have to learn a different offense for summer and then something completely different in the fall, well, that just makes it that much more difficult for them to learn your base stuff.
And that's a big key, too, because you're not going to get enough reps that if you're running some of those mesh routes, that as a receiver, you're trying to find your key, but all summer you've been running it from like a wide set, and then everything's in tight in the game. You don't have the same spacing, so you get a lot of people running to the same zones and stuff and throwing interceptions because it's not what they've been practicing for 2 months out of the summer.
Absolutely. Now, here's a funny story for you. This was years ago, but the first year that I was coordinating the offense at my school, we were going up against this team, and my brother was coaching the defense. And we ran a play and had the back out of the backfield, and the kids are like, they're running a junk offense. Because, basically most of the time teams will keep a running back in for protection. Well, within my offense, a lot of times I feel like that guy's usually a pretty good athlete. I want to get the ball into his hand. So I'm releasing him into the pattern. So we run a play and they get mad. They're like going back. He's like, just play our defense. And they run another play and they're like still getting mad, saying like, that's not their offense. And my brother's like, well, it is their offense. And finally, like the third play, they're complaining. He goes, all right, look, that guy over there is my brother. I know his offense. That's his offense. He's going to do this. Like, well, it's still junk offense for 7-on-7, and they were mad. But I think you have to have something that you believe in, and you want to run a system that allows a flexibility that you can get the ball to different kids, and you can tailor it to the athletes that you have. And one of the things that I see in our program is that from year to year, we may have a really good running back one year. The next year, we may have a great wide receiver. And so it's being able to provide options to get the ball to that guy as much as you can without having to completely change your offense from year to year gives great continuity to the program. And that's kind of what we're trying to build.
And that's a good philosophy because you're not like in college or in the NFL where you can say like, oh, our running back's getting old, we need to sign a new one because that's how I build my offense. In high school, you don't have that luxury. You're like, you can see some of the kids coming through the programs, but you're still going to have maybe transfers in and out, and you really don't have control. I mean, a lot of times you're just relying on maybe siblings or whatever. It's like a whole different beast, especially some of the smaller schools where you only have 20, 30 dudes on a team. Absolutely, and one guy moving in or one guy moving out can mean a difference. And I mean, you look at our team last year. Our dynamic completely shifted as soon as our quarterback went down. And then it was a completely different change of momentum and pace and everything. So it definitely has an effect on your team. Yeah, definitely. So we'll be checking in some more on football stuff as we get going in the summer. I know there's not a lot of big-time topics across the NFL and stuff right now as we get ready for training camp, but keep up the good work, Matt. We'll be talking about that in some coming weeks and getting ready for your season. I think the big thing I had today was more Ben Roethlisberger talk. I feel like I've been talking about it a lot, and I pointed out, I don't even have, all my weeks are running together this summer, and I feel miserable, dude, because I don't think I mentioned it last week, but I got into some poison ivy. I had been cleaning out part of my yard, and I've been doing it for months. The same stuff, so I didn't think anything of it. And I guess the more you're exposed to it, like you're just going to have a reaction eventually. And not knowing it there, I'm like, it's been like blowing up my skin and giving me like all type of allergies. So I'm all stuffed up. So hopefully my voice doesn't sound too wrecked. Because last week it was like all crackled and stuff as I was trying to fight through. But we got more Roethlisberger talk. The main stuff that's been coming out on him is now it's leaked out that he's most likely going to retire after this year, no matter what happens. And you know that either him or the Steelers have put out that message, and it's kind of like a narrative shift from a couple weeks ago whenever I brought in the topic about how everyone was writing about the changes to the offensive line. Is the line going to benefit him? They were just trying to take the pressure off him, I think. And now it's almost like they're taking that defeatist attitude to the whole, like a whole nother level. Where it's not like, is he going to go ahead and win the Super Bowl? It's almost like, well, just enjoy the season while you have it because Ben's going to retire. And so now I'm like, are they thinking they're not even going to make the playoffs? I don't know. Because at this point, you would start to see some type of hype. Some teams hype up their season no matter what. Think of Dallas. Like, they're always hyped up. You never know what to expect. But typically, the Steelers, they kind of know what they have. And, I mean, I think it's a consistency thing. When you have a coach that's been there forever, started like going all the way back to Cowher and then Tomlin, I think the media kind of gets a feel based on what they're putting out there if it's going to be a good year. And it's almost like they're like, yeah, we tried. There was a thing, too, where Tomlin came out and said, like, we really were hoping we'd get James Conner back. And I'm like, that's a random thing to bring up, too. Almost like, hey, we wish you were here for the farewell tour. But this is going to be it, without him even saying it. And so I'm wondering if they're going to move on without him, even if he wants to come back. At this point, I don't know. But I don't think that if you're coming back and they put out that thing about how his arm looks so much stronger and how it's going to be a great year, 2 weeks later they're like, yeah, he's retiring. It just doesn't give me good feelings. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I think the Roethlisberger that we've had is the one that we're getting, and over the last couple of years, where he's been more on the bust side. I think it's partly because of what's been asked of him. He's been asked to throw so much more than he hasn't, and his style of play isn't to throw the check down; it's throw the bomb. And as long as his arm holds up and he has the time, I think he can still be successful. I mean, your boy Tom Brady has showed that you can play forever on dink and dunk throws and getting the ball out in rhythm. But I think with how Ben has played historically throughout his career, he's been so much more physical and scrambling and taking hits that it's probably in their best interest to try to rebuild or to try to find another quarterback, because long term he hasn't shown to be able to consistently stay healthy. So if you're constantly dealing with a shoulder, you're dealing with an elbow, you're dealing with a hip or a knee and different things, they need to start figuring that out, because if they can't find that next quarterback, they're going to be in a world of hurt.
And I mean, you're not wrong. I just don't think that there's anything to, if you're going back to when they lost the Super Bowl in 2010, that team was pretty stacked. I think I talked about like how I was messing around with old Madden games on like the 3DS or whatever. That was the year. And that team was stacked. They got to the Super Bowl and lost. And I think that they definitely should have won that game. And then the next year they're out in the wild card and you have the turnover. And since then they've only won 3 playoff games in a decade. So like, and some of those teams were very good. Like they've won the division 4 times. And they haven't finished lower than second, except for one time in 2012. So, like, you're one of the top 2 teams in the division. You win 3 playoff games, Matt, in a decade.
But let's not get this. Like, let's not try to pretend like Pittsburgh's this offensive machine. I mean, if you don't really watch Steelers, I mean, historically they've been a win a game 6-3, 9-6. Like, they field goal teams to death ad nauseum, and they play defense, and you win the game late. So I mean, I think what helps them is drafting Najee Harris, which we've talked a considerable bit about. That, so you bring up about Connor. Well, to me, I think Najee Harris has the potential to be one of the bright spots on it. Granted, he's able to pick up the playbook, or Matt Canada is able to put him in a position to be successful early on. I think he can step in and immediately make the running game better. And now, like just as a perspective thing, if Najee runs the ball on 2nd down and he picks up 5 yards, and now instead of it being 3rd and 10 or 12, it's now 3rd and 3 or 3 to 5. Now you're looking at a completely different play call, because now you can run a draw. You can run some of those shallow crossing routes. Hell, even Ben can scramble for 3 yards for as big as he is and fall forward for the 1st down. That's what helps Pittsburgh, because their defense plays outstanding. But what has killed them is run the ball inside, run the ball outside, throw a bomb and incomplete, and punt. And then the defense is out for a 14-play drive. They get the ball back to the offense, and then it's pass, no time's taken off, pass again, punt. And they don't take any time off, get the ball back to the defense, and now they're exhausted because they're going 2, 3, 4 drives back to back to back, where multi-play drives that eventually they break. Like no team's able. You take that many shots, you're going to give up points. And I think the defense has enough pieces to be successful, but the offense has to pull their weight, and part of that is take time off the clock. Whether it's the screen passes that everyone hated with Haley, that stuck around with Victor, up through Canada now. Like if it's the short screen passes, if it's inside run, outside run, whatever it is, take time off the clock, and they're going to win more games. Ball control.
And that's a lot of, I think that's the thing that a lot of Ben Roethlisberger apologists, they just don't realize that some of it's him. Check the ball down. You already talked about Tom Brady dinking and dunking. Why is Ben extending plays and then just throwing it up deep? Like, you're not using the outlet. Maybe he's not comfortable since Le'Veon Bell left, but like, you had a 12-4 team last year. If you would have said going into the playoffs that you're going to score 37 points, you're like, yeah, I'll take that. And then you give up 48 because you came out throwing a bunch of turnovers and then had to play from behind. And like you said, it doesn't matter if you're throwing the ball 3 times and punting, and then the next drive you're throwing an interception, and then your defense is on the field the entire first quarter, and the game's over. And there's no way you're like, hey, can they just get a stop? It's like, no, they can't. They're dead tired. And that's like how they lost the last time, too. I mean, there were 2 years that they missed. I know Ben was hurt for the one, but like the Jacksonville game, where it was like Blake Bortles was tearing them up with those checkdowns. The defense couldn't get off the field, and then the offense wasn't doing them any favors, and the next thing you know, it's a shootout, and they lose. So some of it's on the defense, but I think Ben has to just take control and realize, like, hey, we need to get our guys some rest. How about I quit audible and then throw in deep to Antonio Brown or whatever receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster? Like, all right, what are you doing?
I think you have that criticism is fair. However, he's done that his entire career, and it's like it's tough to say, hey, don't run around and scramble and then chuck it up there, because his whole career, like, he's made a living and multi Super Bowls with running, chucking, and ducking.
Yeah, but those Super Bowls, he wasn't that comfortable running and ducking and chucking when he was actually winning the Super Bowls in like his first 5 seasons. So like maybe when he got more comfortable doing that is when he should have realized, like, hey, we're not winning any more Super Bowls. Like,
well, I think the part that goes along with that is early in his career he had Bettis and Willie Parker, and then like even with the fumbles, like Rashard Mendenhall did a pretty good job running the ball for Pittsburgh. He just had a hard time just hold the ball with all those biceps.
Well, that's the one thing they talked about. Hey, who's the most clutch Pittsburgh Steeler? And they talked about Juju. And I was thinking, I don't think clutch guys are fumbling the ball in key situations multiple times. Like, what's your criteria for this? Because I don't remember even some of those other guys fumbling the ball and costing them the game, much less like multiple games based on that. So just hold on to the ball. Maybe it's because Ben trusts you, but like, nah, no way. That's the one guy I don't want him to throw to late in the game. I can't be the only person that thinks that too. Like, oh no, here comes a mistake. I mean, Johnson drops the ball, so does Ebron. Maybe this time with Najee Harris out of the backfield, maybe he won't drop the ball, but I have a feeling he's going to too. They said, like, hey, his hands weren't that good, and then he came out and fired back before the draft saying, like, I just didn't have the opportunity. And I'm like, oh man, that's giving me bad feels. when the running back going in, I was like, you know what? I believe him. But now as I read more of the press going into the season, I'm like, I don't believe him. I don't believe anything anymore. So I mean that's my thoughts. I hate being negative all the time. Maybe when they start actually playing and they have all those 18 preseason games that they're signed up for, we'll get a good feel for the team. But like if Ben trots out there the first whatever the Hall of Fame game, I'm going to be like, no, that's one less win they have this year. Every preseason game Ben plays in, every series is another loss on the year. That's my prediction. If he plays 9 series in the preseason, that's 9 losses.
Wow.
That's what Matt. He's going to lose so much that by the end of the year, it's just going to fall. I know he won't play that many. He'll probably play 6, and they'll finish. What would it be, like 10-6 or something? No, would it be 11-6? What's the new schedule? They have that extra game. So maybe that will factor in. I'll keep track, and that will be my prediction on the year. I'll make sure I change my prediction because we already had our very early schedule walkthrough, but we'll do that again, and I'll try to remember what I said about the preseason series. I'll probably forget though. Anything else you have on the Steelers?
No.
I think I hit most of the things I had. Circling back to Tom Brady. There was that charity golf thing they're doing with Aaron Rodgers. They're like doing some game show, and he called out Aaron Rodgers right on the Zoom call, so practically to his face in today's standards, where he said like he doesn't like his owner and he can't get out of his contract, and that's Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers was like, "You're projecting. I don't hate the owner," but he didn't deny anything else. But I just thought, man, what a boss. Right to the guy's face, he's like talking shit on him before the season. And I think that's where a lot of my negativity for Ben and just like the indecisiveness has been. Because like how many quarterbacks could the Steelers have been making a move on now with a team that's fairly good? I mean, they were undefeated last year. Do you think that this is going to push them to a complete rebuild?
I think it depends on how the season progresses. I mean, with the preseason games and with the other stuff, if we see, I want to see what Haskins brings to the table. Because I felt like he showed some flashes, and I don't watch the Washington football team enough to really get a fair indication of did he get a fair shake or did they put him out of town. But it's like if he's good enough that he can become that game manager that Pittsburgh needs. Like the defense, I feel like is still in pretty good shape overall. I think their depth is shaky, but I think player for player on your starting lineup, they stay healthy. I think they have a pretty good core defensive unit that they can win games with a game manager at quarterback. I don't know that they need a Mahomes or a Rodgers or a Brady to win. I think you just need someone to hand the ball off, don't turn the ball over, and get a couple first downs, get in field goal range.
I don't know. I think we saw that 2 years ago. And in today's game, you need that guy to you're going to be in a shootout. I mean, look at the rest of the guys in the AFC with like Mahomes and even like Lamar. Like you got to, I mean, Baker scored like 40-something. I know there was a lot of turnovers last year, but you got to be able to have a shootout with those guys, not only in your division, but the whole way out. The league's changing. But since you brought up some of those other teams like the 49ers, they were fined along with the Jaguars and the Cowboys for their OTA violations. And so it's just crazy that I'm trying to see if they had additional information. But the Jaguars had the biggest fines of $300,000, $200 for the Jags themselves, and then $100 extra for Urban Meyer. And so it's just crazy because they said that they were doing 11 on 11 with contact between the DBs and the wide receivers. So they wanted them to keep that distance or whatever this year.
But the funny thing was, like, the way that it was worded in some of the articles that I was, like, looking out for it to try to see exactly what was going on, it was like they were tackling, or they were being physical and tackling, and the coaches weren't trying to break it up. Like, so they were like, "Oh no, don't tackle. Sorry."
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. You have a new coach coming in. He's hungry, and he's used to doing that in college. I mean, that was one of the beefs that came out against Harbaugh coming from Stanford. Like Richard Sherman and some of those guys, they were like complaining about how physical the practices were. And I think it's just a switch. Like Urban Meyer has never been in the NFL, so he's going to bring in that hungry, let's compete. I have 12 5-stars here on defense. If someone gets hurt or whatever, oh well, I have another guy that can just take his place. And so I think you'll see that kind of shift. Because a lot of the narrative is like, oh, he's out of his mind, the way he's running practice and stuff. But sometimes you can be successful with that if you take a team that has some pieces that everyone thinks is soft. And, I mean, like, look at how Nick Saban came in. He didn't do that, and he wasn't successful. I mean, in revisionist history, everyone's talking about how, oh, if Saban had one more year, he would have turned around the NFL. I don't think that's true. Like, there's no proof other than look what he's done at Alabama. But remember, until his recruiting classes got there, he was losing to like Louisiana Monroe and other schools like that, that weren't even in Alabama's class. So I think a lot of the Nick Saban success is just because he's out recruiting everyone. And people can say, like, oh, you're wrong or whatever. But, like, he's losing in the playoffs to Clemson, a team without anywhere near the talent that Alabama has. And as we get into the NIL stuff later in the show, Alabama's had, like, 9 of the last 10 or 11 number 1 recruiting classes. You can say, like, oh, well, that was due to Nick Saban's success or whatever. But how much of that is just because he needed that to win? Like, we don't know. I don't know if you would throw him in the greatest coaches. I think other coaches have done better at the programs that they were at before, the smaller programs, and built them up. Like, Nick Saban didn't have the success at Michigan State. He won 1 championship at LSU and got out of there. And then he, there was that one bowl game he was at, and they lost to Iowa. And Iowa didn't have as much talent as LSU. It wasn't really until Alabama started pulling in all those number 1 classes that he's been on his run. So is it coaching or is it recruiting? Urban Meyer has done it at every school he's been at. I think that's a better translation into success in the NFL. And if he doesn't succeed there, I guarantee he goes back to college or takes another NFL job, and he's going to be successful there. So anyone that's in the need for a coach, like, you would almost want to just drop your coach if he fails with the Jaguars and try to bring him in. At least that's what I would do. But you have anything else on that?
No. It amazes me that, like, for as harsh as you know the NFL is going to come at you, that you still try to kind of get around some of that. And I'm sure that it would have been similar to the way Jimmy Johnson would have did it coming from the U when he went to Dallas. It's basically how he outlined a lot of those programs.
Well, some of it is kind of like, I mean, Mike McCarthy's there. He's been in the league for how long? Why is he getting fined? Like, is he just to think that he needs that edge? Maybe he does. I don't know.
That's the way Dallas plays. I would say yes.
So that's just what I think they're looking at. Let's shift gears now before we get into the college stuff. Go high tempo. Tampa Bay, I thought they were going to sweep, which would have been crazy. I know they're the team that any Pittsburgh fan doesn't want to win the Cup, but I predicted that they were going too strong. They would have had to lose before the Stanley Cup. I think they're going to lock it up. I don't know if it will go 7, which I doubt. I don't even think it will go 6, because it took overtime for the Canadians to even get 1 win. So that series is over. It would be a choke job of all time if they were to lose that. So I think you're looking at it where you have the Penguins, and now the Lightning, and they did it in the coronavirus weird pandemic rules where they're going to win back-to-back. And I think that's even more impressive than what the Penguins did. So, I know other Penguins fans are going to be pissed at me for saying that, but it's just a crazier time. Like, they were doing it in a bubble, and now they're coming back. And you know what that means, Matt? Last time Tampa Bay won the Cup, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl. So I don't be surprised if he wins back-to-back. Have you anything on the NHL?
No, but I was thinking, if Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl, does he belong in Tampa Bay's Ring of Honor?
Well, no, that's reserved not for Super Bowl champs, Matt. That's reserved for other honors. Remember?
Oh, I do remember.
So that's whenever that's a whole nother combo, which you probably get some comments on that. But I'll just say this, man. Tampa Bay, I don't even know. I know that they're going to have to blow up their team, but there's just something about in the NHL, like, why can't they be like what the Miami Heat is, where they can try to get free agents just down in Florida? Like, there's not really any destination teams in the NHL. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think LA is a destination team like it is for the NBA and the Lakers. But, like, why not have a team? That's why I was kind of surprised that the Miami Dolphins never really turned that up. Like, why not become like South Beach and like crazy and like try to get all these free agents to just want to come there? Like, the NFL, no one really has it. It's kind of like, oh, we're going to go wherever the coach I like or the quarterback I like is. And maybe Tom Brady's going to steal that and make it a Tampa Bay thing. And if the Lightning just feed into that, why not? Maybe the Rays will be successful and they won't move. And you'll have like a big-time Southern sports town, which, to be honest, there's not that many of that have been successful. They're all kind of like one-offs. So maybe it's a new trend. I don't know. But the other big sport that's going on, the NBA Finals, it's underway. You got the Suns and you got the Bucks. And I've been talking about it. I already saw a couple articles from the media. I'm going to read a piece of this. I think this is from like GQ or one of them. I just had it up. I didn't find what's the other one? Oh no, that was the rumors one. So they're saying that the international ratings are up 13%, but they're also expecting the NBA ratings to go down, and they're saying that it's because of like the politics and like the pandemic and everything. And it says here, if the ratings are down, it's because the league is too woke and social activism has been at the forefront of has its cost more than just the theoretical game fan. Blah blah. They had a bunch of other words in there, but and they're saying that if it is winning, that their star-driven empowerment marketing is working. And to be honest, I don't think it has to do with any of that. I think it's just the star-driven marketing that they're doing. Like, they're living and dying by it. I don't think the casual fan knows any NBA players. Like, I was talking to a fan a couple weeks ago, and they were like telling me which their favorite guys were. I knew maybe two of them. And I was just like, all right. I know normally in football I probably would know every single guy because of fantasy football. I don't play fantasy basketball. I tried it, but because of like the pickups and the uneven game schedule, same with like fantasy hockey, it's just too hard. Like, at least with fantasy baseball, it's every day. So I can check in the morning and like see what's going. And in basketball, it was always confusing me because I would make a pick, oh, this guy's going to do better, and then I get a did not play because they played later in the week or whatever. And so there's a lot of like mismatch, and it's not as consistent as like head-to-head, because the head-to-head stuff, I just couldn't find a rule set in those sports, NHL and NBA, that I liked. to play fantasy. And I know there's different league setups or whatever. I didn't like just playing in one where you just combine all your points or whatever with unlimited pickups either. But it's hard because you don't know if a goalie's going to set. You don't know which game LeBron's going to rest. So if you have a big star, I think Kyrie, I had the one year, he was sitting out like half the year. It really hurt me. And it was kind of like, all right, well, if you draft a guy that's like you're supposed to be your stud and he ends up just not playing, you're kind of screwed. Where in football, I think you can fill it out because if the star running back doesn't play, you can at least hedge your bets by picking up his backup. And guess what? He's going to get some points for you. In the NBA, that team just gets destroyed, most likely. So they went all in on like LeBron and the Warriors. And so like I think most people know Steph Curry. They know LeBron. When they're not involved, that's it. They had a chance to market Kawhi. I keep hearing the argument where, if the Clippers would have won and they would have had Paul George and Kawhi, I don't think people know who they are. Like, the casual fan does not know who Kawhi Leonard and Paul George is. They just don't. They might know Paul George is the guy that broke his leg on the Olympic team, but they're not getting TV commercials. They don't know him. I think the more likely success is the fact that Chris Paul made it. Because he's been in all those State Farm commercials?
Yeah.
So, if anything, I think it's a benefit that he made it over those other guys. Because I would argue that, and I think a lot of the people that write about the NBA, they don't realize, the casual fans, they don't know those people. Like, they just don't. They might be good at basketball, but they don't know them. There's a lot of unheralded guys in the NFL that for every wide receiver that's putting up big-time numbers, the casual fan just doesn't know. But they definitely know Antonio Brown. He's on, what was that show with the Masked Singer or whatever? He's having fights down in his condo. He's all over the news. Like, people know who he is. He might not even play. Everyone's like, hey, I wonder what Antonio Brown's doing this year. Like, the casual fan, they're going to know that. So that's going to be the difference, I think. And so I don't think it's the small market thing. And I'm tired of hearing about it because I hear about it for Pittsburgh, the Pirates in baseball now. It's like, look, it's not 1950 anymore. Like, the small market might have been a big deal whenever you had people that had to live in the city because they couldn't drive to games. And guess what? They couldn't watch the games because they weren't on TV. Every game is on TV now. So if the Pirates really wanted to market themselves, like I said, why not go international like the NBA? If the NBA was picking up 13% international, how are their ratings falling? Like, that means that less than or over 13% is not watching in the United States, right? Like, 13's a pretty good bump. So to have that and be using that in your marketing, like, hey, we grew internationally at 13%, but here's a small print where our ratings fell. It's like, all right, well, if you're investing all this money in international and not at home anymore, it's not working. Like, you can't just be in the negative every year. I just don't get it. And then trying to throw in other sports, too. It's like, well, look at the NFL, look at the NFL. The NFL had like 100 million people. The NBA would go crazy. Like, ESPN would just go nuts if the NBA pulled in that type of viewership because of how much money they spent on them. So, I mean, that's my last thing for high tempo. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but that's the one thing. Like, there's some rumors that the global viewership is up, and I wonder how much it's up because it is an Olympic year. Because there is Olympic basketball, right?
Yeah.
Because I know 100% know there is, because Mo Wagner just won for the German team, the old Michigan guy. He hasn't really stuck around in the NBA, but maybe he'll get an Olympic play, and he'll be able to push through. I don't know how many guys are going to go right from the finals or the NBA, whatever, to the Olympics, but I think that might be where you're getting the international bump. Some casual fans are looking to see where their big superstar, how they're doing in the NBA. I don't know. So it's going to be weird where if it falls again, and I want to see what the NHL one is because they're kind of tight-lipped as well, and that's a sweep. And they're like ready to leave NBC, so I'm assuming that it's not good, right? Like if you're like, all right, yeah, we're doing that, The last thing that I saw was that the Stanley Cup opens with the top first-round game in 3 years. Like, it started with a good playoff. But that was between the Bruins and the Capitals, where they're beating anything since the Penguins and Flyers matched up. So now, I don't know, going into the finals, you're having a team get blown out. But the thing with them, though, same with like the NBA, they didn't have the Canadian ratings, and you have a Canadian team in there. Does the drop really matter if Canada picks up the ratings? So I'd like to see a combo to see what really happens, because they always talk about how Canada rules the NHL TV ratings, but I never really got any numbers from up there. Right?
Would be interesting.
So like, we'll see if we can find them. I've looked in the past, but like, you haven't had a team make it this far, and the regular season, everything's just kind of averaged out with the NBC deal. So, but getting back to the NBA, who do you think wins this series? Bucks or Suns?
I like the Suns. Just I think from watching the way that they had played the Sixers earlier on, I think that they have a good shot.
Well, to be fair, that's a good win for coaching. Like, a lot of there's a scheme, passing the ball around. You're winning with like, I know you have a good core group, but that's like a great evaluation where like there's no one on the Suns that they're marketing. Like, I don't know anyone other than Chris Paul, and I know he hasn't even like their star. I know Giannis from the Bucks, and it's like the total opposite, where they have this one guy that they've been touting as like the next superstar, and this is where they need him to shine. It doesn't matter if you're a small market. LeBron has proven that. You didn't hear anything about how the Cavs were small market when LeBron was there, Matt. Because guess what? It didn't matter. People were tuning in to watch him. So the small market thing is just a bullshit excuse for, I think, fans of these teams to just give their owners a gigantically long leash. Like, you don't hear the Packers as they're fighting with Aaron Rodgers. You don't hear their fans saying, like, well, to be fair, it is the best we can do. Aaron Rodgers should probably go to a bigger market. You don't hear that. They're like, we're the damn Packers. We need to win a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers can either get out or he can come in and be all in. Like, you don't hear that small market excuse, and they're like the small market of small market. Where the hell even is Green Bay? People couldn't point it out on a map. They might know that it's in Wisconsin, but that's my thing. I have nothing else for High Tempo. You got anything else?
No.
I'm going to just do a quick look here through my notes. I don't think I had anything. My big thing that I wanted to talk about this week is the NIL endorsements. Because, the only other thing that I had was Ben Roethlisberger. They think he's going to retire, but I already mentioned that. I can't really get into that because they don't know. It's the same leaker that leaked some of the other stuff about players not working out hard. So how much can you believe? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've been saying this, and it goes back to my Nick Saban argument earlier, where the playoffs completely broke college football. Nick Saban was in the right place at the right time. Colt McCoy got hurt. Otherwise, if Texas beats that Alabama team, does Mac Brown leave? Like, does he just stay at Texas? Do they start taking in a bunch of recruits? That was the first one Nick Saban won there, wasn't it? Or did he already have one?
I think that would have been the first one.
I'm going to look it up real quick. But I'm just saying, like, you have to get lucky. Like, I would argue, like, if Colt McCoy didn't get hurt, I would think that Texas had a really good shot to win that game. Alabama didn't really have the team. Yeah, that was the first one, 2009, I believe. Let's see if it has it on here. I hate how some of these things are just like Alabama versus randomly Tennessee for some reason. Yeah, they played Texas. Alabama was number one, but Texas, and they were both undefeated. It was Nick Saban's third year. The year before, they lost the Sugar Bowl. And so you would think, like, maybe they just didn't have what it takes in terms of top talent yet. But getting that first national championship is a big deal. Look at Dabo Swinney. I mean, he wasn't there yet. And all the way back, because that was the year they lost to Florida in the championship game. That was the Urban Meyer was still there with Tim Tebow, and then they lost by double digits, and then in the Sugar Bowl they lost to Utah by double digits. So, like, by any means, a year before that national championship, Alabama wasn't a world beater. The SEC wasn't on top. I mean, I know you had Florida and LSU up in that mix, but they weren't really there. They weren't on the Alabama level. It really didn't happen until the back-to-back 2011 and 2012. And that's where I was talking about now, where then that's where they had their recruiting classes. They started getting number ones, and they've gotten number ones ever since. So the fact that they're losing, 5 of those years, when you have the number one recruiting class every year, that's just a testament to how some of the other top teams are also bringing in top talent. But when we went through the playoff breakdown, it's still the same 4 teams that are top in each conference, and then maybe like 7 other teams altogether. This NIL thing completely blows the doors off that. Because the big news that I joked with you today, Miami, they had a booster, an MMA gym that's all through South Florida. It was like all right here, American Top Team. They're basically just like a mixed martial arts gym. They said that they're going to pay every scholarship player on Miami $500 a month. And I already talked about this earlier. Like, everyone kept telling me, and I've talked to a couple different athletes over the past couple weeks that played college ball, and they all had the same sentiment. Like, I probably wouldn't have got any money. I wasn't a big enough star. That's why I didn't go pro. But I was telling them, like, look, no one knew. Like, I never heard of American Top Team. Had you?
No.
I think people are really underestimating when you get to some of these smaller towns where the university is the main employer. It's them. Like, I drove through Indiana, Pennsylvania, home of IUP. If IUP University wasn't there, which I know the university's in the middle there, guess what? That town would be nothing. So you can't tell me that if they get a couple basketball players, that every business, or even football players that have like decent stats, that every business in that area isn't going to be trying to throw some money at them. And when you get to the bigger towns, like even a big city like Miami, it's only going to be even higher. Even Urban Meyer came out and said, like, look, Ohio State's in a big city. It's going to be the big cities that kind of equalize. This is where Pitt can take it to the next level and really equalize their recruiting against Penn State. Penn State's in the middle of nowhere. They're going to rely on boosters. I think, like, just going across the Big Ten, a lot of the schools, like Ohio State's in a big city, Michigan State's in the capital, Michigan's kind of in its own little town, but they're close to Detroit. I wonder if that's going to hurt them or if it's going to help. Northwestern's in Chicago. How could that hurt? You know what I mean? Chicago doesn't have a big town anything. All it takes is a couple boosters or like some businesses in Chicago to say, well, you know what? We're going to make this a Northwestern city. Or maybe we go with Loyola Chicago. Much easier to buy 5 basketball players, Matt, than however many 85 scholarship players for football. Or I guess Miami has 90, so I guess that's the new top. But it takes one business. So Miami, let's say, a lot of people are saying, like, oh, this Miami one's not going to mean anything in the long run because some of these schools are going to pay more. This provides them depth. If you're a player that's down between Miami, and let's say you're a 3-star, you're down between Miami and Pitt. Miami's like, look, we're paying $500 on top of your scholarship if you come here. Where do you think that guy's going to go?
Huh.
Oh, yeah, and we're Miami, you know, beaches, babes, winning tradition. Like, we were trying to get back up. So if you're a 4-star guy and they're not throwing a bunch of stuff at you, But Miami's going to give you that consistent, like, hey, you're getting your scholarship, you're getting this money. I wonder if it's going to be locked in for 4 years, if it's a 1-year deal. Like, I don't know all that yet because it's brand new. But it's
I would bet it would be 1-year deals because then it's contingent upon maintaining enrollment at the university.
Well, the way he set it up, though, is he's doing the scholarship players. So I think that would be, I think Miami, like if you're the coach, you'd want that to be locked in multi-year if you can. And then it's up to the players to maintain their scholarships. You usually don't lose a scholarship unless, like, you're failing classes or unenrolling. Because even if you get hurt, you still have the scholarship. I don't know if you'd get the monthly payment on top of that, but I don't think the owner's going to be a dick. Because, like, a lot of times if you get hurt, you get the extra media publicity. That's only going to be better. Like, hey, here's my gym and here's my guy rehabbing at said gym that no one had heard of before this. So, the one thing that I want to get your thoughts on, though, do you think it's going to rebalance the scales? Because, like, it's been pretty obvious in basketball that some schools, LSU, like the Arizonas that had been caught by the FBI, like from Louisville, that they've been paying players anyway. If said some of those other schools are doing it on a lesser scale or even not at all. Like looking at Pitt, how can you say like, oh, Pitt's been paying players? Like, oh, money wasted. Fuck. But do you think that this gets them a balance? Because now, hey, maybe some business does want some legal thing where they're going to throw money into it. And they can write it off because if they're sending money as like maybe potential, I think the way this one's written is it's like a contract worker, he can probably write that off as taxes now because it's legal. So why not get some of that off the book to contracts? Because the tax thing, you specifically get an advertising budget right into your write-offs, Matt. So like this is directly advertising. That gym owner wrote in there that they're going to be advertising for him on social media year round. So that there's tax purposes behind this. So I think the bigger cities have an advantage, but I wanted to get your thoughts. I know I kept talking.
Well, I want to say where I think that it helps is it's for the guys that are on the fringe. Like you said, 3-star to like a 4-star that doesn't really have the draw of the Power Fives. I think those are the ones that are going to benefit in this. Because then it becomes a matter of, well, do I go to school A or do I go to this other? Like, now you're starting to be able to pool, this extra money, and you'll never convince me otherwise that it hasn't been going on all along. But now people can hide in plain daylight as opposed to some of the shady charitable donations and different things that the players were helping with that recruiting process in the past.
I think it's definitely going to help too. Like you said, it's most likely been going on everywhere. I want to make that clear. But I think a lot of times it was kind of like, hey, it's just a payment. I mean, look at the Laramie Tunsil thing. He was like, the text that leaked, he was like begging for the utility payment. I mean, like they knew he was going to the NFL. How do you know the coach just didn't say, you know what? Screw it, we're done. We're done paying him. It's not like they had a contract. He couldn't go to like the courthouse and be like, yo, you were supposed to pay this. And then be like, what? So, I mean, looking at that, they probably would have just been like, hey, they meet in person. He says, hey, you haven't been paying this. He said, you left, you're going to the NFL. You pay it yourself in 3 months. Pay it up. And then that's it. You'll never hear about it again. Unless like the family member comes out and they're vindictive and they try to do something like crazy like the Tunsil thing where it almost blew up in his face. But I don't know. I think a lot of times this is like I'm still zeroed in on those middle guys. Like you look at Ohio State and Alabama, they're recruiting top guys, and it's like, how are they getting another top wide receiver? Their entire room is stacked. Where is it money? Is it a chance for a national championship? I mean, other schools are putting players into the NFL, where now it's kind of like, hey, why are you going to Alabama? Oh, well, they put a lot of guys in the NFL, and I have a chance to like really promote myself, where now I think you can look at some of the smaller schools where if a guy goes off at, say, Virginia Tech, like a school that's kind of been down but had been known for football in the past. Now, hey, you can come to Virginia Tech and be a stud, and we're going to market the hell out of you. And if you're that guy, why go sit on the bench at Alabama for 3 years? You can come be a star. Look at what we did for Mike Vick.
Absolutely.
And then they're like, yeah, you know what? That can be. So I think you are going to start to see that. And I think the wild card in this is the transfer portal, because a lot of guys, they get lied to. I mean, that's the one part that the coaches aren't really talking about. Like, they've been getting lied to, a lot of these players. That's why they're transferring. Like, hey, you're going to come in and you're going to play whatever position. They get on campus, they're like, yeah, you're a lineman. You're not a tight end. You're not a tight end. And then they transfer. And then they go play tight end at, like, Tulane or somewhere. But now it's almost like, hey, go to Tulane. Like, if you were at Miami, like, let's say we were at Miami, you wanted to be a tight end, and they said, no, you're going to be a tackle. And he's like, well, I'm going to transfer then. We'll go to Tulane. You're going to lose your monthly stipend. How many guys are going to say, well, you know what? I'm going to stick it out because I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to get paid. And some of these, like, they're looking at, oh, that's a low amount. It's only $500 a month. They're college kids. They're already getting their thing paid for. How do you know Miami doesn't have 3 or 4 other ones? You get 4 of them. That's $2,000 a month, Matt, for each player. And then they can still sell T-shirts with their face on it. They can still sell autographs. This is just like their base pay. So, like, people are looking at it and they're like, haha, this is going to come back to bite Miami. That's such a low amount. How embarrassing that they're talking about this. These athletes are worth millions. It's like, no, this is like a stability pay. Because you might sign on to be a star thinking, I'm going to go to Alabama, I'm going to win the Heisman, I'm going to sell all these autographs. You get hurt or something? I think it makes Miami a little bit more appealing, where it's like, all right, I'm going to go, they're going to lock in this payment, even if I don't start right away, because I need to work in the weight room or whatever. I'm getting paid to perform. I don't have to have a side job. Because I saw a lot of athletes talking about, like, now I can have a side job. It's like, okay, cool, cut grass, do a YouTube thing. But even the YouTube thing, you're only going to get viewers if you're good at it. Or like the USC quarterback was trying to throw, like he was hitting the goalpost at like 50 yards or whatever. It's like, cool, how many other tricks can you have? You know what I mean? People aren't going to watch the same video 100 times. If they're going to subscribe and send you money, they want to see different things. You have to win some football games, Matt. You can't just do all trick stuff. So I think it's going to be a big deal. Because as I looked at it, and I look at some of the other recruiting, everything was going to the SEC for a while. The SEC doesn't have the media markets. They just don't. So now, how much more of an imbalance is going to be pushed back to, and I would even say against it. So the Big Ten is traditionally in the north. They have a lot of the largest cities up there. Like, is Rutgers really pulling in the New York audience? Rutgers has a top 10 recruiting class right now, which everyone knows at this early. Looking at recruiting classes is just a joke. So they could very easily end up 68th. But can they use that to their advantage, saying, like, look, we're in New Jersey, we're in New York, we're in that big media market. Like, is it going to pull in and benefit some of those other schools, like Penn State, from being over there in the middle of nowhere? Or is it specifically going to elevate conferences like the ACC, where most of their teams are in the cities? Is it going to help them out? Like, is this finally going to balance out, say, an NC State that's in Raleigh, in the capital, versus the Tar Heels, UNC? Because if you drive downtown Raleigh, you see Wolfpack stuff everywhere. You don't see the Tar Heels at all. Duke is in Durham, so they have theirs. UNC's in Chapel Hill. And I know Chapel Hill has big business, and they can probably have big donors, wealthy university. Is it going to really come from donors? Or has it been coming from businesses in the area? I mean, like, Clemson has all those car dealerships and stuff, the manufacturing plants where their money supposedly comes from. And they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, so maybe they don't need the big city. But, like, I think you'll notice if in 5 years, if a lot of big city schools like Georgia Tech come out of nowhere, then we'll know, like, all right, yeah, it benefits them. If nothing changes, and the playoffs expand, because I think the playoffs expanding is the other big point. Because the money thing, eventually it's going to run out. And the top schools that are bringing in the most money, they're going to be able to pay more. So you're going to see the same teams, but you still have the thing like, hey, we were close to a championship. You can come in, be the guy. You can be Joe Burrow for our school. And right now you don't have that option, really. There's only, I mean, we read the list. There's like 10 or 15 schools that are on that list every year that have won a national championship in the past 30 years. And you could throw Georgia and Notre Dame in there too. But like, going beyond that, it's like, all right, you really don't have it. If you haven't won in the past 30 years, you're not going to win it anytime soon, really. You're just not. You can't compete with Ohio State and Alabama in recruiting. And anyone else is back. It's like, is Texas back? Is Michigan back? Is Nebraska back? It's like the same schools every year. Are they back now? No, they're not. I can just answer that right now.
No, they're not.
So this year, if the money starts flowing in, is it going to help those teams push over the top? The last one that I think is really going to help is like the NBA type stuff. Michigan had been close to a national championship, and if you look at their recruiting since like 2013, I think what really hurt them, they're not recruiting the McDonald's All-Americans like the Kentuckys and Duke, where they can take some players that leave for the NBA early. But Michigan's been putting in a ton of guys in the NBA, not at the top draft, but they're still leaving early, which means that they're losing their chance for a national championship. Like you look at Villanova, they have guys playing as like seniors. Michigan hasn't had that.
Yeah.
Baylor, their team was like seniors and juniors. Michigan's guys are just, they're at the point where the school's so big that they're getting the looks in the NBA.
But I'm almost wondering at this point with some of the NIL stuff if you're going to see more players sticking it out at college longer.
Well,
because if you're making a small amount of money and you're still able just to be in college, how many guys just stick it out and end up just looking just to make a little bit of money while they're in college, get their degree, and then move on?
Well, that's where I was going with this. Michigan, I mean, for the past, it's almost been a decade now, every time a guy's close to the NBA, even if they're given a grade for the G League, they go get paid. Now, for the first time, they have their point guard that was transferring in. He was leaning towards the G League. He's now going to come to Michigan. Hunter Dickinson's coming back. And Michigan's bringing in the number one recruiting class. That hasn't happened. Like, normally, you might bring in a good recruiting class, but all your other guys are like, hey, we're going to go get paid now. And then you're kind of like starting new. It's hard to win a championship with that. Like Baylor and the Villanovas and the other teams that are coming in, they've kept their team together. Like, their guys haven't left early. And now, with the money thing, like I said, for basketball, you only have to pay for 5 guys. If, like, let's say a gym or whatever like Miami got, if something was like, hey, we're going to give $500,000 to the basketball team at Michigan, that's $100,000 per player. I would think that a lot of them might come back and try to get the guaranteed money in the draft. Why take the chance and then fall in the second round or end up not drafted? Because that's happened. And then the guys that playing overseas or whatever, where now it's like, you know what? I would get drafted a lot higher if we win a national championship, you know what I mean? Maybe I'll come back. So that's what I want to see. Because I think that that's really going to push out some of those top schools where, like Duke lately has been number one recruiting class, everyone leaves for the draft. Number one recruiting class, everyone leaves for the draft. Michigan's been like number 30 recruiting class, everyone leaves for the draft, and you're like, hey, why come we're not competing like a number one team? It's like, yeah, you're losing everybody, and you're only recruiting like number 30. Like, it's not going to work out. You can have as much coaching as you want, but it's not going to work out. So I almost wonder if that's what pushed Coach K, where he saw this coming, and he's like, you know what, now I have to retire. I haven't even been winning, and I've been having the number one recruiting class. He's been recruiting like Nick Saban and performing like Bobby Petrino.
Oh, wow.
Where you have a couple successful years, but I know he didn't win the national championship, but like, how many has Coach K won recently, Matt?
Fair enough.
I mean, I guess you could say he's like Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, like at Ohio State, where he won one. That's like as many as Duke has won, right? I think he's only won one recently. I'm gonna look this up because UNC has won. They only win one. Now I'm curious because I know Coach Calipari at Kentucky only won one. I mean, you're going back to whatever season for the Tar Heels because I know they won one. They beat Michigan State that one year. It was like 2008 or something. But for basketball, how come their things all messed up? Yeah, they won one 2005, 2009, 2017. That's the Tar Heels. 3 in the past 20 years. Coach K, what does he have? 2001, 2010, and 2015. So his are a little bit more spaced out. I forgot about the 2010 one. I was just taking the 2015 against Wisconsin. But still, only 2 years. I mean, Urban Meyer had more success in him than in less years lately. So, I don't even know who to compare him to. We'll see what happens. Is it going to be a big thing? Because I think basketball is where you're going to see more of an immediate impact. And, of course, the Olympic sports. If you thought some of those small schools that had been, like, surprising, like, what was it, JMU? Their softball team made a run or something. Like yeah. I just don't think that's going to happen anymore. Coastal Carolina in baseball, I know some of those sports is a little bit trickier to get on a run. I also wonder about like lacrosse and stuff, like where it's like Maryland and Johns Hopkins. Like if a big money school is just like, you know what, we want to win in lacrosse. They just throw all their money at it, and then they win like 10 national championships in a row. Like, if Texas decided tomorrow that they're like, you know what, we're going to buy a lacrosse championship, I guarantee they could win the next 10 national championships. No doubt in my mind. So, that's my final thought on this, is football, where everyone's looking, I think you might rebalance the scales. It won't have as much impact as an expanded playoff, though. The expanded playoff is key. Because even if you're paying, now you're still spreading out the money. Like Auburn might be able to pay to compete with Alabama once every 5 to 10 years. But realistically, are they going to go on a run like Nick Saban? No. Alabama isn't going to change until they lose. Or until Nick Saban retires, I mean. Just like Coach K. Like Duke was going to have their run no matter what until Coach K retires. And now, even like UNC has a new head coach this year. How is that going to help them? Now you have this to navigate where you're paying players and letting them make money and you have a brand new head coach. Like, I think it's going to be extra hard on them. I think it's going to, the more established coaches that have these contacts, like Pitino. I know I brought up Bobby Petrino. I was just thinking of his accident because someone brought that up in their suit. Like, what happens if a player commits a crime or whatever? They still get paid. It's like Bobby Petrino wrecked his motorcycle after illegally paying his mistress. He got 3 more jobs since then, Matt. Like, they don't care as long as you're winning. So, but Rick Pitino, though, he's been kind of at the smaller school. I guarantee if like some mid-major or like a team that's always getting their ass kicked in basketball decides like, you know what? We're going to make a run. Let's just hire him. He has all kind of contacts. He's been in the sport for like 50 years. And he's going to be like, yeah, I can get your players paid. I can do it. And they're going to, why not? They let Will Wade coach at LSU. There's zero incentive for someone not to hire him now that this is legal and say, like, go wild. Because it's going to be guys like him that get it done. That's my final thought. If anything else comes up of this, I'm sure we'll be bringing up more payments as they come out all summer. Because the recruiting season is going to be heating up, especially for football. But that's all I have. You have anything for the final bell?
No, I don't. Just stay healthy, continue supporting. We appreciate it.
Yeah, if there's anything he wants to hit up let us know. But off season still, so we're trying out some different things. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.